Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Agent Gateway community meeting. I saw some of the new members. Welcome. So I would like to pause for you to introduce yourself if this is your first time here.
Okay, so I am Rogelio. I'm from Venezuela, but I live in Brazil. I don't speak English very well, so uh, I work with like a solution analyst, and I would like to know more about K-Agent and Agent Gateway, and now the entire solution.
That's awesome. Thank you for joining us. By the way, one resource I would recommend is we do have a book on AI agents in Kubernetes, which also covers K-Agent and Agent Gateway. If you want the link, I think it's on solo.io website. You can download that book for free. So it might be a good resource to check out. Ping me if you have trouble finding it. Do we have any other new members? Isaac, I don't remember if you joined before.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. It's
Oh,
hard to keep track of everybody, but thank you for joining. I think we probably are ready to jump into our first topic today. I saw John put our cell library. So John, go ahead.
Yeah, that's kind of an internal developer facing one. So if there's any other comment, we can do others first, but I'll give people a second. If not, then we can go into this one.
Okay. Does anybody have any general questions regarding Agent Gateway, or is there any general development update that's worth sharing here for Agent Gateway? I think is the K Gateway release is going to be out soon. Oh, it's already out.
No, it's very close, like early next week, I think.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
Although
so
I've heard that a few times, but this time it sounded for real.
Yeah, I remember. I swear I heard that last week. It was next week. Yeah. So for folks who are not familiar, refer to last week's agenda topic. We talk about the Gateway 2.2 release going to come out really soon, which has the brand new API for Agent Gateway. Does anybody else have any other topics or questions they want to bring up before John jump to the cell library topic?
this is a question I haven't explored yet, so maybe it's a silly one. But is there a way to integrate on using the UI Agent Gateway with an MCP registry?
That's a great question. I don't think right now we have an easy way. Can you explain to us the user scenario? Because the other day I was just playing with this MCP. I think it's called the OBAT. They do have the registry integrated as part of their UI for their gateway.
Yeah, I haven't fully fleshed out the thought myself either. But with something like GitHub, right, for instance, if you have an enterprise GitHub subscription, you can set up your MCP registry as the one that people in your organization should use. And it really only comes into play with like using the GitHub supported IDs like Visual Studio Code. So if you go into the extensions pane and you look for an MCP, if you have an MCP registry set up in GitHub, and then you say you restrict users in your organization to only use MCPs on the registry, it will only show those in the GitHub, the VS Code IDE. But if we were going to be deploying Agent Gateway as sort of your API gateway for MCP, it would also be kind of cool to have it be aware of the registry and sort of only allow MCPs from that registry to be set up in Agent Gateway. But again, I haven't fully thought about this. It's just something that I thought about when I saw that feature on the GitHub end, I was like, huh, I wonder if there is something similar on the agent gateway side.
No, this is a great question. I don't think we have anything right now, but I do think you could do this manually yourself. It just we don't have a nice way to allow you to do it easily from the UI, if I understood correctly, right? So you could potentially set up agent gateway configuration and the kind of register these are the MCP servers I want people to have access through the agent gateway. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, you could do with the config YAML for sure, but it would be neat if I can just give the registry URL and it just sets up all those MCPs for me or something like that. I don't know. I'll think more about the exact use case and maybe share it in a future meeting.
So I just want to mention that we have another project called Agent Registry, and we're actually planning on covering that use case with that project, but it's all actuated with Agent Gateway. So the underlying implementation of security in that project is done with Agent Gateway, but it's also a registry in itself, and that's kind of one of the core purposes.
That's a great point. So Aton, with the agent registry project, user can potentially configure agent gateway a lot easier by discover and config with the MCP server already registered with the registry.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
That's
So
good. I hadn't heard about registry before. I'll take a look and explore that.
I
Just-
think that feature is coming, right? Is it ready for
Yeah,
ISAC?
it's I mean, there's so the version that's out right now is very much kind of a work in progress. And we did a first version of it for the last KubeCon, but we're diving back into it in a big way now. So a lot more to come.
So maybe once it's in a more interesting state, we could potentially share with the agent gateway community here. I can imagine the question Isaac is asking, other people probably wants to do this also instead of do it manually.
Definitely.
All right, great perspective, Isaac. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Does anybody else have anything they want to bring? Dimitro, go ahead.
Oh, hi everyone. I have a question about the MCP multiplexing. In the default example, we have just under routes and then backends, we have MCP and then multiple targets. But what if I will create this multiple backends and MCP sections? Then I see it like more grouped, and instead of like everything in one single MCP block. But then I'm not sure we're getting the same result. At least I'm able to see on the road two backends, but when I click on the playground, it doesn't look like it's doing the correct multiplexing. Or am I doing it wrong? Or because nothing is preventing from doing this right now.
Which playground? Is that the Agent Gateway UI playground?
Yeah,
or the
yeah.
Inspect? Okay.
Yeah. So basically, in the default Agent Gateway example that we have this config example where we have backends, MCP targets, and then you have two different MCPs. And instead of this, if we will have under backend,
The bound multiplexing?
yeah, I think it's in documentation. Let me just ping the link.
Okay, let me pull it
Yeah.
out to just make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, this is the one.
Okay, it's in connect multiplexing, which is this one, right? Okay.
Yeah. So the question is, if you scroll down a little bit to the example, if under backends, I will actually duplicate these routes. I will have this MCP targets for each MCP separately, right? What is basically, see, under backends, there is next section is MCP and then targets, right? So if I will copy the first one and I put it just for the second MCP, I will create like a separate group. Then we have like two different groups.
So Dimitra, the difference is multiplexing versus load balancing. So if you have multiple backends, it's load balancing in between them. If you have multiple targets, it's multiplexing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a great clarification. It all makes sense. Yeah.
Would it be possible to put that in the docs and have that called out as well as the YAML for both scenarios? Because it's something I ran into as well, and it was quite confusing.
It's confusing, and also when I look on the list of tools, I don't think it's showing merged list of tools currently. It's a little bit unclear. Yeah.
No, that's great feedback. So Art is here. I'm going to take a notes on this. Maybe Art, if you heard the feedback, maybe you can log an issue or look into that for Dimitro and Isaac.
Yeah, it sounds like we want to like better explain the config difference between load balancing and multiplexing, and it's load balancing is multiple backends and multiplexing is multiple targets.
Yep.
Mhm.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, great issue you guys brought up. Anything else? John, should we talk about the cell library then?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I wanted to bring this up because it's kind of an important thing that's going on, and we need to decide. Well, I've kind of already decided, but we need to affirm the decision. So basically, we use Cell like a lot of places in Agent Gateway, and we want to use it in more places. And how the Cell library works today is basically we're passing in parts that are of like this request object. We pass this request object around through the entire lifecycle of the request, and it has things like the headers, obviously, and the path and method and things, but we can also attach arbitrary metadata to it, which we do for things like, okay, here was the validated JOT token and other things like that. So everything the cell operates on is from the request or on the response side. But the library can't today take in like a request object. It takes in instead essentially JSON. It's not technically JSON, but functional equivalent. And so what we have to do is we have to convert the request into JSON. And so this is expensive. And so we only do it more or less once. And so we find, the time that is optimal to do the snapshotting. And we do it one time, and then we reuse that throughout. This is not really right because, for example, the request is getting mutated as I progress through the proxy and through different filters and things like that. And so we're not getting updates on those state when they change. And we can't really, we could snapshot it every time, but the performance would be abysmal. It's really, really slow to do the snapshotting. And so the other thing is as well, is just ignoring that part. When we do the evaluation, the library just does copies and heap allocation just like everywhere. Everything's owned values. And so if I want to do something like request.method, that should be very fast, right? If we did it with native code, it would be 1 nanosecond. But it's going to do an allocation for the request. It's going to make a map out of request that has different fields, and then it's going to look up the method and clone it and all this stuff. So it ends up taking more like 100 nanoseconds. And so that limits us in how many cell expressions we can reasonably evaluate in a single request. So doing 20, for example, to log a bunch of stuff is noticeable, very noticeable in terms of the performance. So I've been working on the library for a while, chipping away at things. And ultimately, they just made a massive change to the internals, which I won't get into the details. And I was forked off before that change to basically rewrite it most of the way to support what we need, which is basically being able to take in the HTTP request directly and operate on it directly and return references. So this is working, which is very cool. The downside is now we have forked off the cell library indefinitely if we go down this path, and there's no reconciliation. Like it's a hard fork, not just a small patch set. So that's basically just like I'm going to talk to them. They have like a community meeting tomorrow. So I'm going to see if there's maybe a path forward, and if somehow we're not forking, but it seems unlikely. So that's kind of the state. I think we can choose basically to have very nice performance and unlock a lot of things that we have been kind of holding off because they weren't viable. But then we have to maintain this library. But it's a pretty small library, actually, believe it or not, for a full programming language.
What did they do? Like, are there any benefits to their new version of this, or no?
So what they did was basically, so Cell is a spec that has, it's kind of like Protobuf, right? It's a spec that has official language implementations. And just like Protobuf, the official language implementations are, you can tell which company wrote them. And then there's a Rust version that's unofficial, and usually the Rust version, just like in Protobuf and gRPC, is way nicer than the other languages, right? But it's also not like 110% spec compliant. This is usually a good thing for users. Like Go Protobuf was quite nice in the Go world as an example of that. So basically the project is now like pivoting to go be spec compliant, which in my mind is like adding a bunch of bad things and complexity and things like that. Concretely, what they did was they basically made it so that there used to be like an enum of like types, just like the Serde JSON model. You know, you have like string, map, list, whatever. That's what you like snapshot into. Actually uses Serde, just not Serde JSON. They basically changed to have like traits, and so there's like 20 different traits you can implement for like I'm something that can do adding, or I can do indexing, or that sort of thing. So it's very complicated. Their idea, kind of like part of it was like, okay, now we can use references within things, so they do less copying to some extent, but it's still not what we need. Like there's no way to pass in like a reference to an HTTP request and then get everything out of that, even if we go implement all the 20 traits and whatnot.
Yeah, it seems like we should just maintain our own, especially if it's small. I mean, how big is it? It's like a parser and an operator.
So we'll keep the parser probably. Like I'm trying to decide if we import their parser or if we just fork and then don't touch the parser. But yeah, we don't need to, like the parsing part's fine, and I don't want to write a parser. No one else wants to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm on Team Fork, especially because, like you said, Cell is like, at this point, basically so integral to the proxy.
Yeah, there's been things too where like I've contributed to the library like, I don't know, maybe 10 times now to add things. And oftentimes I've had to like compromise on exactly what we wanted to like meet the library's needs. So it would be kind of nice to have like a liberation from that. Of just like specialized optimizations for exactly what we want.
Is there any danger that we are not like spec compliant if we do fork?
So the main thing that they're not like spec compliant with is like a bunch of stuff that's irrelevant to our usage, basically. Like a lot of the spec is about like being able to take like the abstract syntax tree and like serialize it to protobuf and like deserialize from it, and a bunch of like crap that we're not doing. Or there's like things that I feel like are just harming users and just like being obnoxious in the language that like you don't have to do. Like I'm trying to think. There's this one function that's like, you know, checking if it it's like checking if you have a default function basically. So you can do like a.b.c.d, and you know, it then set a default for that, and it's kind of like a nil safe reversal. That's technically not spec compliant, like because it should evaluate in a different order, but it's a very nice function we have. So that's a long way to say I don't think so. The one thing that is a bit of a bummer is if I go in like the Cell Playground website, then the exact same thing that works there may not work in Agent Gateway, or vice versa. But that's already true today, really, if you go between that website and the Go implementation and the Kubernetes one and the Envoy one and the Rust one. just because there's so many like different factors into a cell environment. And we have an issue already to create an agent gateway cell playground, which will be way nicer than the generic one anyways, because it will have all the functions that we have, which is the most important part, and like a drop down, so you can be like, okay, here's my last request, here was all the data, and like actually operate on a real request instead of putting data in.
So if I understood correctly, I'm curious to see the users of the agent gateway, some of the users here to weigh in. I think the experience is relatively transparent to the user, right? The way they install and using agent gateway is going to be unchanged. If we have this new cell playground, that will be even cool. The main concern is the maintenance burden that somebody else have to maintain this forked version of cell library now that we fork it, right? But the user impact is very minimum, and John, you also highlight there's potential performance gains for the user.
Yeah, I'll need to get it working end to end through all of Agent Gateway to like give concrete numbers, but yes, there'll be performance gains, especially as we like. It's also like blocking features. Like there's this feature I've wanted to do where today you have like one policy, right? You can do one transformation. I wanted to have a list of transformations and like conditions, like a cell condition on which one you evaluate on, and like you can stage like through the pipeline, so I can apply like 10 transformations in order. Like that's just a feature we can't viably implement today, but we could implement with this, and it would be fast. So it's performance from day zero, but after that, it will also unlock more features as well. Or like Christian keeps asking, I think you as well, actually, we're like dynamically setting environment variables in standard IO servers. Like that's something that we could do if we do this.
I see.
And we've had like 20 bugs from the snapshotting logic. So it would be nice to get rid of that. Because we had like logic to only do a partial snapshot, but we would often incorrectly decide which parts to do.
Yeah. I also have to work on something where I need to update the snapshot. So I'm biased, and I also want this.
Anybody else have any inputs from the community on this?
And on which repo this fork will exist?
I need to figure that out. If probably we would take, what I'm thinking is we would take the cell, so the cell crate has a parser in it in the interpreter. Probably I'll take the interpreter part that I forked out in their repo and just put it into the Agent Gateway repo and then import the parser, probably. But alternatively, it would be in a separate repo, but I think that would just be more annoying to do. This won't be the first time that we fork something into our repo as well. We also have a hyper client fork.
Agent gateway on. All right. Thanks for that discussion, John. Bring this issue. Do we have anything else? I think we're right about the time too. Any last minute questions? All right. Thanks you all for joining, and talk to you soon next week. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.